Hey Year 12s! Today we're discussing the context of identity and belonging. If this isn't your context or you're not confident about what the task of context involves, stop. Go watch our videos on context in general or on your own context. There are 4 possible texts you could be studying for identity and belonging, each of which you'll find specific pages and videos for on here. But first you need to understand the big ideas of the context, which we will be discussing in this video. First, what is meant by identity and belonging? The important thing to note here is that there are 2 parts to this context, which means that prompts which only include one of those 2 ideas still require you to talk about both. Identity is obviously referring to a sense of self, the factors that build up one internal self, and the ways in which that is projected to others. Belonging is talking about that niggling inherent desire that humans have to belong, to fit in with others and have groups to be connected with. Senses of belonging are various and complex, from family relationships to groups such as friends, colleagues, or military platoons. This expects you to discuss not just the groups we do belong to, but the groups we fail to belong to, wish to belong to, or are rejected from. The next step is to look at how these 2 ideas interact, as they obviously influence each other in some way. This is a point we will discuss at some length throughout this video. Alright, on to our first discussion point, that identity is important. How we behave and our ability to relate to things and people around us is based on our sense of identity. Even people who feel lost or are attempting to find themselves have an identity, albeit maybe not a fully developed one. So what I mean when I say identity is important is simply that sometimes we need to examine why that concept is, within itself, complex and worthy of analysis. While identity is heavily influenced by our childhoods, it is important not to think of this as something static, but as something which shifts over time with our experiences and process of maturation. Identity is not only affected by time, it can be affected by context. For example, the person you represent yourself to be to your parents may be different than the one your friends or partners see. This may be a matter of false personalities to belong to more than one group, but it can also represent a distinct shift in how we present ourselves to others and perhaps correspondingly think about our own identities. Whether or not the core of one's identity remains the same despite these multiple representations of self is another point to be considered. Let's move on to the converse of this first big idea, that belonging is important. In the same way that identity is important on its own, a sense of belonging is central to the human condition. The urge to belong is innate, stemming from our historical evolution, and is a source of safety and security. Even now, we are made more vulnerable by living separately from a group. The groups we belong to change over time, and this is important to our ability to grow and mature. Both the groups we associate with and the ones we idolize and are rejected from are significant forces on our lives. Alright, let's jump back to identity for a second and talk about the ways in which identity is formed. There are innumerable factors that contribute to the development of our particular sense of self. Significant factors that you may want to consider for discussion include upbringing, how we were raised and by whom. For example, studies have shown that the single most influential factor on our voting preference is who our parents voted for. Past experiences. In a way, our identity can be seen as the culmination of all our past experiences, both positive and negative. Gender. Gender can obviously play a major role in the formation of our identity. Even if not coming from within us, the external pressures on men and women are different. Sexuality is an extension of this, and it is certainly worthwhile to consider the effect of this particular idea for the LGBTIQ community. Race or nationality. Like gender, even if our background isn't internally influencing us, people's experiences can be affected by the language they speak, the accent they have, or the colour of their skin. Culture, age or maturity, education or intelligence and job, socioeconomic group, religion or beliefs and values, the groups we belong to, and the people we admire. Each of these factors can play a significant role in shaping how we think about ourselves and identify to others. This leads on to one of the theories we can put forward in relation to the interaction between identity and belonging, that identity influences belonging. Our senses of identity and belonging are entirely interlinked. Often, our sense of self dictates who we wish to associate with, such as people who share our values or beliefs. While there are some groups we cannot choose, such as our families and often communities, we can choose our friends and partners, allowing for our identity to exercise power over our sense of belonging. On the other hand, belonging can be seen to influence identity. The relationship between identity and belonging goes both ways. The groups we belong to, or even those that we want to belong to but are rejected from, influence how we see ourselves. Some groups demand a level of conformity and require us to sacrifice a part of our identity in order to belong. Furthermore, gaining a relationship with others may assist in shifting our beliefs and gives us new experiences which in turn influence our identity. Perhaps even more obviously, all of us are born into a group to belong to, at least to some extent. Our families and communities are not chosen groups, but one that we inherently belong to from birth, which influences our sense of identity from a young age. Another point to consider is if it is the urge to belong or the actual processes of belonging that influence identity. The desire to belong can encourage us to relinquish elements of our identity or to abandon other groups we had previously belonged to. On the other hand, belonging to a group can influence our identity by creating new experiences that are specific to those people. Okay, on to our next big idea, that over time, identity changes. There are many ways that this can happen or be seen to happen. As we grow older, have more experiences and form new connections with others, our identity may shift. We gain wisdom and new experiences that can influence the way we think about ourselves. Identity is not static, but shifts and transforms with us. This change in our internal world, in turn, influences the way we see the world around us. Children and adults do not often share perspectives because as we age, we are more likely to approach a situation with cynicism or with knowledge gained by past experiences. Let's quickly consider one last idea, another theory about the way that identity and belonging interact, that is, that identity and belonging contradict each other. Beyond suggestions that one concept or the other requires the sacrifice of the opposite, we must consider if identity and belonging are actually mutually incompatible ideas. Undeniably, both of these senses alter how we experience the other, but they also place irreconcilable demands on our psyche. If we accept that identity is what makes us different and belonging is what makes us the same, then we acknowledge this basic contradiction. This contradiction is a tough one as both concepts are obviously important in our lives. Alright, that's a lot of big ideas to think about. To help reinforce it, read the text on this page, which is similar to what we've just spoken about. Turn this into a set of notes for yourself and work to integrate your text knowledge into this information. Thanks for watching, I'll catch you next time. Because you know it's all about that wiki. Next video, it's all about that wiki, Next video.